Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people just like you. I'm your host, Claudia. Today's guest is going to share how he battled addiction and alcohol abuse, and how one day he decided he had to make a change. He has done that, and now he's a life coach helping other people lose the self-doubt and gain their best life. Please help me welcome Jeff Seow. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good, Claudia. How are you?
I am well, and I know I said this already before we started recording, but I love a good accent, so I'm stoked to have this conversation with you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So we're going to talk a little bit about you and some things you've been through in life. But before we do that, I would love it if you would share a little bit about yourself with the audience.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Mind Access Life Coaching, and it's the service that helps unfulfilled millennials get clear on what they want to do with their lives, overcome the self-doubt and the fears that stand in their way, and basically create a strategy to help you get from where you are now to where you want to be.
I love it. And that was a nice, very succinct description that you had there. That was perfect.
Yeah.
What made you passionate about helping people get past self-doubt and figure out what they want to do in their lives?
Well, it was something that I struggled with a lot for myself as well. I spent a lot of my life hiding away, being afraid of many things. And, for many years, I let it control what I did. And I found myself in a spot that was completely not where I wanted to be in life. It was basically working in a role that I didn't like, but I thought would be the pinnacle of where I was going. And it was also me being a drug addict for about 8 years and an alcoholic and smoking cigarettes like no tomorrow. But these were two different lives that I was leading. I was leading, this nice, like, go to work, wear this nice stuff, and then at home, just literally blitz my mind. And that stopped about 2 years ago, purely because I could not continue any further, and it had to change.
What was the moment like for you when you decided I cannot continue any further and I have to change?
Yeah, the moment had been coming for a while. Like for a couple of years, I already knew that I wanted to do more with my life. And the moment kind of came in the pandemic, purely because I had the chance to slow down for the first time, probably ever. I'd always just been rushing through like different hurdles in my life. And I had time to really think about it. And it was like, why am I, especially during the pandemic, was when my drug use went through the roof at the beginning, purely because, well, what do you do? Like everyone's in lockdown. So I really started thinking to myself, there's something going on here, like, and it became to a point where I really, really had to quit because I was starting to get promoted at work. I was starting to have more responsibilities, and I was starting to realize that personal development was something I actually found interesting. I had started to find my way into this at the very beginning. I started reading some books. I mean, I had read books in my past, but they were all fictional. This is when I started to actually read non-fictional books, and I read a book called The 50th Law. Have you heard of that book?
I have not.
It's a book written by 50 Cent and Robert Greene. It is an amazing book, and the main message in that book is the importance of sobriety. Do you know that 50 Cent, you know how like he goes like in the club and he's like drinking and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
He fills up all of his bottles with water.
Really?
Yeah. So he pretends to drink alcohol with other people, but while everyone's drunk around him, he remains sober with clarity. And he uses that to broker good decisions, and that's how he's so successful, because he doesn't touch alcohol. When I was reading that, I was like, wow, like, why am I destroying my mind when I can use it to do something good with my life? And that was the beginning point. I mean, there was a journey beyond that, but that was the beginning turning point.
And who would have thought that 50 Cent would have given you the clarity to
Yeah,
sober up and change your life?
crazy, right?
That is pretty crazy. Talk a little bit about what started your path in addiction and alcohol abuse.
Yeah, so it kind of started like when I was 17. because I finished school early. I finished school at 16, and at 17, you kind of go to university and you don't really know what's going on. You just try and fit in. Like for me, it had always been a battle to fit in my life, purely because, growing up like ethnic in Australia, especially like as an Asian during the early 2000s, was a little bit of an awkward period, as you can imagine. And for me, like fitting in was always very important because I didn't want to feel left out. For me as well, I'm half Asian, half Portuguese, meaning that I don't necessarily have like a culture to return to. Like I'm a half, and then I come to Australia, and I'm also in a new culture. And then, but I was born here, but like you can see, there's many different things happening at once. So to me, fitting in is very important because, it was very important because it means that you're not left aside from the crowd, right? It means you're part of something. So as school finished, it kind of became apparent that this was the way that things were trending. It's that everyone started doing drugs and drinking and smoking, and it started off at the beginning as trying to fit in, but then it started becoming a serious problem because I took it to extremes. I would always do the most. I would always drink the most, smoke the most. I was always trying to do the most purely because it just became me. And then that's when it started to become a problem for about 8 years. And I just couldn't get out of it. It was a lifestyle.
So you were an overachiever or are an overachiever, and that even transcended into your drug and alcohol use.
Yeah, yeah, it was a problem because at this time I was still at university, I was still doing many things. Like for me, like the academic side of things has never been an issue. It was kind of like the fact that I just always got stuck into bad patterns in my life
Mhm.
until about 2 years ago when the cycle broke.
So, as you were going through that, when you were using drugs and drinking, were you making excuses to yourself or to other people that you really didn't have a problem, things weren't so bad, or how did you justify it? Or did you?
Yeah, that's a good one actually. I used to justify it a lot. It was always I need it so I could be de-stressed. I need it so that I just want to go on and party on the weekend and have a good time. I need it so I can sleep at night because I used to not be able to sleep at all. So I seriously could not sleep unless I used to smoke a lot of weed just to be able to sleep. So for me, I used to justify with every excuse under the sun. Say like, maybe I was trying to lose weight, so I would smoke more weed or smoke more cigarettes. There would always be something that, would be there. That's a great point, actually. It was a story I was telling myself that I could not live without these substances.
So, the time when you finally decided, yes, I can, how difficult was that for you to convince yourself, or was it easy because you were ready to change?
It was pretty hard. It was very, very hard. I spent a lot of time trying to make peace with this decision. You can imagine, like if you like say for example, been with a partner for like 8 years and then you have to say goodbye. And to me that partner was marijuana, right? There were other things going on. There were other drugs, alcohol, smoking, but that to me was my biggest vice. And quitting that was hard. Like that was like my life, like everything was just revolving around every decision. And making that decision was extremely hard, and it took a while, but I knew it had to be done. So I remember I tried to quit smoking. I tried to quit marijuana, drinking, and smoking all on the same day, and that bombed horribly. To anyone out there trying to do that, don't do that. Take it one step at a time, because I'm always like try to take things to extremes, yeah, and
Mhm.
it never worked. So I had to create a measured approach to quitting, and it took about 6 months.
Did you do that on your own, or did you have the assistance of a rehab facility or some type of program?
No help at all. This is something that I use that is literally using pure willpower. So for me at this point, I decided enough was enough. I cut off a lot of friends straight away, and I cut off a lot of things. All I did, I went for about 6 months. All I did was I went to work, I went to the gym, I did my personal development, and I started doing life coaching training. And I did this for 6 months. I just didn't spend time with people. I mean, I did like sometimes some friends, but for the most part, it was just me, the gym, personal development, me, the gym, personal development, and work. And I did this every day. I had no life, but I didn't care because I knew I had to change something. I had to say no a lot because I spent my whole life saying yes to things, right? And that's a problem. See, that's why saying yes is always a bad thing. You've got to characterize your decision and decide whether it's worth it or if you need to say no to protect your energy. And that's something I learned in that period.
So, do you feel like this was the first time in your life in a big way that you were finally able to say no and make that change?
Yeah, I feel like at this point in my life, I started to actually just man up, I started to really just take responsibility for myself rather than blame other situations and blame everything apart from myself. It was like, no, this is on you. You put yourself in this situation and you got to change it. And I made sure to.
I feel like that's so impressive because you look at a lot of people who are struggling with addiction or alcohol abuse, and everything is somebody else's fault. And to be able to take responsibility finally and make that change is very, very hard. What in you made it? I mean, I know you said it was difficult, but what in you made it so that you were able to just say, you know what, I'm ready, it's time?
It was kind of just like me knowing that I wasn't living up to my potential in life. And I'm not talking about, in terms of like financial wealth or anything like that. That's not what potential is. Potential is like living up to some kind of positive value you can do in the world. See, because for me, for a long time, I'd always had a problem with like poverty. I've always had a problem with like, people living in like the third world. Not a problem with them, but a problem that there is such inequality in this world
Hmm.
for a long time. And it had always been in the back of my mind, but I kind of always just forgotten about it. But every time, that I would hang out with friends or people, I'd always be one of those people that just talk about things that nobody wants to talk about. I'd always be that guy, right? So if this was my whole life. So for me, I knew that there was something that I could do. I could sit here, and just be a sorry, good for nothing piece of shit and just take and take and take from the world, or I can start to give back. And this is kind of when my mindset started to flip because I realized that when you start to take responsibility for yourself, you begin to realize that it's not all about yourself. That's the biggest change that happens when you start to like, I say man up, this is not like a, like a gender term, but it's kind of like you grow up. That's the thing.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where I realized at the age of like 24 that something had to change in my life.
I know you said that you kind of isolated yourself a little bit and you were gym work, personal development, and you let
Mm.
a lot of relationships go in order to become healthier. The relationships that were still there, do you feel like those strengthened more quickly once you got healthy?
I would say yes. I would say yes, but also not necessarily because these are people that I've known for a long time in my life, and we always had common ground even before I was that kind of person that went into the party scene. So it's not necessarily like our friendship got any weaker or any stronger. It's we were consistent. So these are people I've known for majority of my life, So that's what happened. Because for me, when I went through this period, I didn't lean on other people. I've never been that kind of guy that I just go up to you and I say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this, and I need your support." I just took it all on myself, and I don't recommend this to most people, especially as a coach. That's what coaching. That's why I'm a coach, right?
Mhm.
Because that's what I do. But I don't recommend this to most people purely because unless you have a really good reason why you're doing it, you're gonna default back to your old habits. Luckily for me, I had a very good reason why I wanted to do it.
Do you feel like that for most people, they need that support system around them? They need other people there to help them get through this and be successful.
Yes. Absolutely. For the most part, if you try and rely on yourself, there are things that you can't see about yourself, and these are called blind spots. And your triggers, like say for example, if you've had a really tough day at work, what's going to be the most comfortable thing you can find? Maybe it's a beer, maybe it's 10 beers, maybe it's a pack of cigarettes. People do this all the time, because it's kind of relapsing back to what's comfortable. But for me, I've always been very like determined when I put my mind to it. And when I have something I want to do, it doesn't matter like how much I want something else. I'm willing to sacrifice it purely because like in my mind I can already see a version of what I want. And in this case, I could see a version of myself that was sober, that was like physically fit, and I could see that. and I knew what I had to do it. So I was never going to sacrifice that. But for most people, unless you really have that and you're kind of like so determined that you're going to get it, then it's better to have some support because that's going to allow you to stay on the right path.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I see as well. It seems like people need that assistance, a lot of times to figure out what's really going on, like you said, with the blind spots. But do you feel like a lot of times when people are in the throes of addiction that they are unwilling to listen?
Yeah, absolutely. They're unwilling to listen. See, like nobody changes unless the need to change is greater than the desire to stay the same. You cannot force coaching. You cannot force counseling or therapy. People are by default going to do exactly like they wish. So, but they on the inside need to come to a point where they're at tipping point. They're like, okay, remaining like this is intolerable. And that's when you can start to really help people and give them a lifeline. And there's plenty of people that reach this point every day. You see people in personal development, you see people trying to improve themselves, you see it all the time. But it's not really characterized until somebody reaches that point and they reach for help or they decide to do it by themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I feel like you are an anomaly because you decided to do it and you made it happen. Tell me how that has made you a better coach for others.
It's made me a better coach because I'm able to understand the whole process in depth and not understand the whole process in terms of, someone else is pulling me through. I know what it's like being on your level, on a personal level. Look, when you get coaching, the coaching is going to happen once a week. Like that's normally coaching once a week so you can keep accountability, right? And you're left for the rest of the week. I know what you're going through. I know that battle you're facing. I understand it purely because I did it by myself 24/7. And I'm not saying that people should not have a coach, Claudia. I think they should because coaching is literally an acceleration to where you want to be. It would not have taken me as long as it did, like this 2-year journey, if I had a coach. But I know the ins and outs of everything. I know exactly what it feels like when you wake up and you go to sleep, when you eat every single thing. I know what it feels like when you're trying to move your life in the right direction. And so I can empathize. And that empathy is what allows me to actually understand people's minds when I coach them because I know why they might relapse. I know why they might struggle. I know why they might default because I've been there.
Do you still have days where, I mean, I know as an addict or a recovering addict, it's like sometimes it's one day at a time, sometimes it's 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. Today, what are most of your days like? Do you still have times when you think about going back, or just for a minute I can do it and it's no big deal?
No, never. Never. It would be like literally impossible right now. Like I work as a life coach. I help people change their lives for the better. If I was doing that in my background, that would be like that'd be pretty bad. You know what I mean? Like that would be awful. So no, it doesn't even cross my mind once. There's a reason for this as well because I've always seen my life as one giant book. This is a weird analogy, but I've always seen my life like this. And in this book, there are many chapters. And for me, when a chapter is closed, you can never go back. And this is for everything. I've always been like this in terms of relationships, in terms of events, in terms of scenarios. When a chapter is closed, there is no returning. That's done. And to me, that chapter has been closed. There, you can't open it again.
I love that because I think that is what gets a lot of people, and not just with addiction, but with unhealthy relationships
Mm.
or unhealthy habits, is they don't close the chapter. Where did that come from for you? I mean, you've always been that way. Is that something that came from your parents, or where did you get that?
Not really. I just read a lot of books as a kid, like because as a kid, we didn't have a lot of things, because we didn't have phones or like YouTube. So all I did was read. I read a lot, and I started to kind of see similarities between like how life lives and how like different books go, and especially with life. Life is full of chapters, and you can't read a book backwards. You can only read a book forwards. So Well, you can read a book backwards, but the story's not going to make any sense.
Right.
Yeah, so moving forward is the
Mhm,
only way, and that doesn't mean you don't look back into the past. You look back to learn from your mistakes, but you don't look back to feel those emotions. Because if you allow the past to control your present, then that's where you repeat the same mistakes. If you look forward to a better future, then you can change whatever you do. Because we only have the present moment. This is
mhm.
like all we ever have. Everything else is within our imagination. And because of that, if we're fully aware of what we're doing, then it's very difficult to let the past control us.
I feel like people like to not take responsibility, and sometimes play the victim. Let other things control us, let the past control us. What do you say to those people? If that's your client, how do you break them of that habit?
You've got to be aware of why you're letting the past control you. It's like, what about it is so comforting? Because the brain is always going to seek security. It's always going to seek safety, right? Because that's its default. So
Mhm.
whenever things are hard, you're going to go back to things that make you feel good. Like maybe it's like drinking, smoking, whatever. You're going to go back to that. So the key there, if you're trying to move away from it, is to recognize your triggers. It's to recognize what's formed this pattern in the past. Because understanding your own mind is the only way you're going to move forward. Because the mind is full of chatter, distractions, different things all at once. And unless you can really begin to hone your focus upon what you want and not create tunnel vision, but in a sense of like hone yourself to really be present and move forward, you will repeat self sabotage and go back to past patterns. So you've got to be very aware, especially of where those patterns began. Like if you notice, like during this, when you've asked me, I've been able to tell you exactly where it began. I know
Mhm.
what happened. I know how it happened because I had to think about it. I never always realized it this way. I had to think about it to be able to give you a clear answer within a few words. And if someone else is able to do that, then they're able to stop a habit because they understand, okay, like if this is what started it, maybe this is what I can do to fix it. But you have to be conscious.
Why do you think sometimes it's like you said, we our brain and we go back to what's comfortable even when that's not good for us or even when it's harmful, it can hurt. Why do you think we do that as humans?
Because you see, our minds are required to save as much energy as possible. It all comes down to that. Our brain needs to conserve energy to keep us alive. And you know what takes up the most energy is fear and creating change and new scenarios. These things, that's why, like, let's give you an example. You know, when you go to work for many years, the day goes by like that, right?
Mhm.
What happens when you start work in a new place?
Oh,
How long does the day go?
yeah, it's
It's like
forever.
torture. Yeah. Exactly, because our brains dilate time. Based on how much energy we have to expend, we dilate more time. So if you're on autopilot, which is the default for the majority of people, because your brain puts you in that, the day goes quickly. And likewise, if you're not on autopilot and you're being aware, that's where your brain's going to use more energy. So that's why people go back to past patterns, because when things are uncomfortable, their brain gives them every single alert under the sun. You need to stop, you need to relax, you need to go back. And it's not people's fault, it's just the way we've been wired. That comfort zone has a neurological link to it. And then I've studied neuroscience. So to me, like I understand this link. It's to basically conserve the amount of energy we use. And to do that, it means that even if you go back to past patterns, you don't realize it because your subconscious mind is controlling it. And you find yourself here and you're like, why am I doing this? Why is this happening? But if you're not conscious that this is what your default is, you will always go back to it. That's why you need to change your foundation.
And how do people break that? What's the best
Mm.
way to do that?
Well, you've got to characterize every single thing that you do. You've got to isolate what it is you want to, like. How many people sit down and look at a list of their lives? What do you want to keep? What do you want to remove? Right. I did this constantly for months. Like, what do you keep? What do you want to remove? And you have to take those steps because the things that you want to remove from your life, maybe it's a bad habit, maybe it's people, maybe it's a person, or not a person, sorry, maybe it's a particular situation that you do, like a job or something like that. You have to get clear on exactly what it is you want to remove and what you want to gain. Because to gain something, you have to lose something. It's just a natural equilibrium of life. So for me to gain sobriety, I had to give up, my old lifestyle. For me to become a life coach, I had to give up my job. I had to travel across the country. Like these are all things that had to change. But you've got to be okay with change because change means you're moving towards what you want. But if you're not okay with change, then you will remain in the same spot. And then that's where a lot of people find themselves.
Yeah, and I think again that is the comfort place, but we've got to get away from that. So, when you're working with somebody that is struggling to get out of that comfort zone, how do you help them do that?
Well, we've got to recognize, first of all, why you want to get out of that comfort zone. Okay. Like, is this really in your best interest? Do you want to? Because if you don't want to, that's completely fine. Because we can sit here for months and you're not going to do anything unless you really want to. That has to be established. And two, you've got to recognize, okay, now based on what you want, let's look at the steps that you need to take on a daily basis. And we're going to plan that out. But first of all, we've got to get very clear on the why. We've got to be very clear on the how, and then it's about the what. What do we have to remove? So, what limiting beliefs, what fears, right? What things, what obstacles stand in your way in terms of your mindset, and then clear out that path and build it up in terms of using NLP.
Mhm.
Use improved communication skill. Use improved relationship skill. Use it to enhance your whole life, particularly if you've gotten rid of all those negative attributes, which you will, because there's an accountability system that I build. The accountability is the most important thing. I should have said that first. Without accountability, nothing happens. So, as a coach, I make it very important to check in and to have a full accountability program that I've created to make sure that people are accountable to themselves and also to me, because now you've got two people that anchor you down to make sure you create that change.
What about when somebody stumbles? Because,
Mm.
sometimes it's easy to say, "Oh, I messed up. I'm just gonna quit." Like that's just the easiest thing to do. So when somebody stumbles, what's the best way to get back up and keep moving forward?
Well, don't look at it as a failure. Look at it as a lesson. What made you relapse? What made you go back to this particular pattern? You've got to get clear and you can't say, oh, I failed. I'm just going to keep doing it. It's like, no, what happened? What happened? Why did you allow it to happen? And are you okay with letting it happen again in future? And if you are, then, well, that's really rough because you've come so far. But if you're not okay, then let's look at the triggers that made it happen. Let's look at the fears. And mostly people relapse because of fears. Like I said, when that change happens, it's scary. People we have not been designed to be chasing fear. It's not a natural thing.
Mhm.
It's not a natural thing. It's something that if you do, you will have massive growth in your life because you're chasing things that you're afraid of. But that's not our default. So the key is to become okay with fear. And if you feel things are changing, then you've got to become okay and realize it's part of the process. But if you go back to that comfort zone, then that's where you've got to realize, okay, like why, what came up? Why did I feel this way? Why did I allow it to happen?
I know you mentioned earlier that you read a lot growing up because
Hmm.
there were not phones and YouTube and, all that fun distraction that we have now. And you also mentioned people's limiting beliefs. Do you feel like it is easier growing up now to have a positive attitude and a positive self esteem? Or was it easier before we had all these distractions in the palm of our hand?
Life is 1000% more complicated now. I actually have thought about like, growing up in this particular time. So like being like 10 years old in 2022, I think it
Mhm.
would be horrible. Purely, and I really empathize with the people that are younger generations purely because now everything is publicized. Like in the, back, I say in the old days, I'm not even that old, but like, but in the old days, if you had something going on, you didn't have it all over social media.
Mhm.
If you weren't always blasted with like bad news from the media. You weren't always blasted with stories of other people's lives. You weren't always completely just inundated with information that you're just like, what is going on? Back then, it's like you turn on the TV, you might watch the show, you might turn it off, go read a book, sit down and quiet. Maybe just go and sit outside, relax, watch the sunset. People don't do that anymore. Like our lives are so intricately intertwined with technology that there is no
Mhm.
separation anymore. Like if we're sitting down and we're talking to a friend, how many people that you've been in coffee with, will turn away from you and check their phone
Hmm.
to look at someone that's messaged them from somewhere else when you're present in front of them. How often? Like, that's a very common thing, right? And that's just one example of how technology is really just integrating itself so deeply in our minds that there is no separation. There's no inner peace anymore because now our inner peace is dragged away by pretty much everything under the sun.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, and I will admit, I spend way too much time on my phone. I have had it on silent for like 2 months now, and it has been refreshing. I mean, I can still, I still look at it when I need to, but just not having it ding all the time and buzz at me has been amazing. So, is that what people need more of in their life?
I can't really say that's what people need in their life, but I could probably say it's what might help them if you're feeling overwhelmed. Kind of take a step back.
You know, you mentioned the old days, and, I think we kinda joke about it sometimes when we say, "Yeah, all the stupid stuff that I did when I was a teenager, like, it's not captured on social media and, on the phone there." So, I agree with you that I think it was an easier time for us because we didn't have to relive all of our mistakes, right there on the internet. What can people do today to make that a little better for themselves?
You can start to separate your personal life, like your, and I don't mean like your personal life at home. I mean like your inner life. Okay. A lot of people try and not listen to their inner life. And what I'm talking about there, this is a concept in Buddhism as well. There's the inner world and the external world. And it's whatever is on the inside, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, whatever you are processing, you need to be able to come back and actually pay attention to it and not just drown it out with YouTube videos or drown it out with, like, Facebook memes or whatever it is. You can't drown that out. You need to listen to what's going on the inside because that's going to tell you what needs to happen. And a lot of the time, people try to ignore it. They try to ignore their intuition, their inner world, and fill it with things on the outside world, which never works because it makes us into automatons. It makes us into robots that are reactionary. You don't want to be reactionary. You want to be proactive in your life. You want to create things for yourself. And the only way you can do that is if you're clear on what you want to do and how you're going to do it. But if you're just consuming and consuming and consuming, then it's not going anywhere. There was a stat, I think I saw this on LinkedIn, right? 99% of people on LinkedIn are consumers, 1% are creators. Only 1% of all people on LinkedIn create any content. Everyone else consumes it. I fit into that 1%. But I think that's insane.
Mhm.
I think it's insane that everyone's consuming information but not actually putting any out. And that's because imagine their inner worlds. Imagine how much information people are taking in. So for me, I have a strategy that I use. I use the silence as well, but I've also turned off all notifications on my home on my lock screen,
Mhm.
so that basically my lock screen is never disturbed. It's just the time, and then every day I have 4 separate time slots, which will be in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and just before I go to bed, where I will take care of all my notifications. And I've got a lot of notifications, but I make sure to separate it into 4 different time slots where I don't check it all the time. And it really gives me a lot of peace to work and do the things I need to do and focus because I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about what I'm doing.
Is that a strategy that you try to get the people that you're coaching to also adhere to, or is that something that just works for you? I mean, I love it.
I've not I've not tried to get anyone to do it, but I'll tell them about it. This is not part of my coaching. This is just
Mhm.
part of like my life, right? So I always share details on my life if you ask, but I don't get you to copy what I do. But with the coaching, that's different. That's like actual things I've built. But you give me a good idea. Maybe this should be in there as well. It's not a bad one.
Tell me, as a coach, what is the thing that you're most proud of?
Easily my client's growth. If there wasn't any, then I wouldn't be a coach. So that would be number one. It's like watching people grow and improve before your very eyes, and everything else is secondary.
How does it feel knowing that you're an active part of that growth and success of another human being?
Oh, it's amazing, Claudia. It's great. Like, it's awesome because you're actually helping someone else change their lives. And this is something that I touched upon when I first got sober. I realized that I had a passion for it, and it's where it's led to today. And it is the greatest thing to watch someone like flourish and change their life purely because like you only get one life, right? It's so important. I'm always very about that. Like you only get one life. And depending on if you can see someone drastically change their life in a small period of time, like that's amazing.
What do you feel is going to be the growth of your coaching? Like, do you foresee books and online classes? Like, where are you taking this?
I like the book. The book is something that I've wanted to do for majority of my life. And I've told you before, I was an avid reader as a child, and I've always loved writing as well. It's been something I love. So for me, yeah, a book is definitely something to come to in the future. And I would just like to coach more people. Online classes are good, but I don't wish to do that just yet, purely because right now I want to focus with people one to one. And when I feel like the repertoire is there, then you can really coach a larger class, but not yet. Not yet, no. So probably right now, more free stuff. I want to create more stuff, like more books. I want to create more videos, more webinars, more podcasts, just more free stuff to give out because I like doing that. And then just keep improving my coaching.
When you think about writing a book, do you foresee yourself, and maybe it's both, writing about your story and what you've been through, or something that's more a teaching book, a coaching book type thing, or both?
Probably both. I would have like the foreword of like this is what I've done,
Mhm.
and then the rest would be teaching concepts. It would be a way in which you could improve your life that isn't already so done to death, like outdated, like you've got like Atomic Habits, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Right.
Yeah, it would be something different that I've learned personally. I know what it is, so I'm gonna write about it.
Okay, so we won't make you say it now because we
Yeah,
don't
I'm not
want you to
saying
we don't want
it.
you to spoil it. Um, what do you feel like is a piece of advice that you can give out to everybody that's meaningful, something small they can do to positively affect their life, no matter what situation they're in right now?
That's a good one. Meditate. Meditation is really good. If you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling overwhelmed, just take time out and go and meditate for 20 minutes. I know it's going to seem hard to even meditate for 2 at the start, but the more you get into it, you're going to realize that if you're struggling to meditate for like even 1 to 2 minutes, that's kind of a good reflection of how chaotic your mind is. And if you start to practice even 1 to 2 to 5 to 10 minutes, you're going to begin to love it over time, purely because it's like a breather from life. It's like you can just refresh your entire mind. So that's a big piece of advice. It's changed me a lot being able to meditate every day.
What is a piece of relationship advice that you would throw out?
Definitely look to put yourself in someone else's shoes more than just your own. Make sure that you can come from other people's point of view. Don't just think that you're correct, or don't just say that, or don't just view it from how you want to view it. We all have something they'll call the naivety disposition, where we tend to view the world from our own point of view. It's very important to learn to shift into other people's point of view to understand where they're coming from. Because if you don't do that, then that's how you wreck relationships. You've got to be really good at understanding not just what they're saying, but why they're saying it. And begin to realize that if a lot of people have a problem with you, it might be you, right? So, or if you have a lot of problems with people, it might be you. So that's something to really get clear on. It's like, well, like what's happening?
I love that because I feel like sometimes you have to look at what is the common denominator. Like you said,
Yes.
if you have a problem with everybody, most likely the problem is not everybody. It's the common denominator of you. But it's so hard for people to look inward and really reflect on that and make an honest assessment of what is going on.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, we are going to take a quick turn here before I let you go. We're going to talk about tattoos. I know we talked about them earlier before we started. I love tattoos, as I told you. I have a lot of tattoos. I don't have my next tattoo planned. Normally I do, but I'm figuring that out. I know that you have some tattoos and you really feel that tattoos tell a story. I would love to hear about your most meaningful tattoo.
My most meaningful tattoo that I have is the one that I have on my chest, on my right chest. So I had like a near-death experience a couple of years ago, and I somehow survived this. I'm not even sure how, but I just did. And I was very shooken up by this for a long time because one, like, have you ever had a near-death experience?
Mhm.
And when you just accept it, you're like, this is it. Like, I'm done. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and everything slows down, and you're just like, well, this is it. You just completely accept the fact that you're gonna die. And I've been there. I had a bit of a car accident, and I completely accepted this, and then I came out of it unscathed, and I was like, how is this possible? Like, how I didn't have a single scratch, nothing. I was like, how's this possible? And I had to really sit down and think about my life. And this was when I was still in the peak of my drug addict behavior. And I was like, well, what am I doing with my life? And long story short, I got a tattoo on my chest when I went to Bali because every time I go to Bali, I get a new tattoo because it's cheap over there and it's good quality. So I
Nice.
went to my favorite tattoo shop, Inked Up Tattoo Parlor in Bali, Kuta. No, sorry, Leggin. And I got a tattoo in Japanese that says kansha, right? So kansha means gratitude. It's a famous saying in Japan, kansha. It means gratitude for life. So that every time I look in the mirror, I never forget the fact that somehow I didn't die from that. Because I really just have no idea how I didn't die from that. Like, not even a single scratch. I have no idea. So to me, every time I look at it, I will always look in the mirror and say, okay, like, this is what happened. It's like a badge. And I never forget that I have only one life and I can't waste it because we don't get another one if we die.
What is going to be your next tattoo?
Oh, I've already got a plan. It's going to be the tree of life.
And where's that going?
It's going to be probably on my forearm. I haven't decided which forearm, but it'll be on one forearm. Do you know about the tree of life?
Mhm. Mhm. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, Yggdrasil. It's got such a good, beautiful meaning to it in the Viking world. But yeah, that's what it's going to be.
Nice. I love it. And when are you getting that? Do you know?
When I go overseas again, because my uncle is a tattooist, and when I go and visit, I'm gonna get him to give me a nice tree of life on my hand.
I have a lot of great friends, only a few are tattoo artists, but I think I need more of those in my life, more tattoo artist friends. Yeah, I'm going to have to start working on that. Jeff, where can people find you? So if they want to do some life coaching, if they want to learn how to only look at notifications 4 times a day, or if they want to go to Bali and get a tattoo, where can they find you?
You can find me on social media at Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. On Facebook and Instagram, you can find me at Mind Access Life Coaching. And on LinkedIn, it's going to be my name, Jeff Siao. You can also check out my website, mindaccesslifecoaching.com.au. And there's tons of freebies I give away. I already have a book out there. You can get the book. You can watch my webinar. You can watch my podcast. You can interact with my stuff. So feel free to check out all my work, and hopefully it provides you value. And if you would like to work with me, I'm always open to a conversation on that.
I love it. Jeff, thank you so much for spending some time with me today to talk about some of the struggles that you went through, how you have turned your life around, and how you now help other people have the best life that they can. Thank you so much.
And thanks for having me, Claudia. It's been excellent, and you've been amazing. Thank you.
I really hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Jeff as much as I did. I truly appreciate how open he was about his struggles and how he shared the advice of putting ourselves in other people's shoes. So remember, until next week, you are strong enough and you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.